Today I want to show you guys how I enjoy playing Engineer in the open world as of current balance and one of the elite specializations, numerous reworks. That is the Scrapper. So you got three choices. Core Engineer really feels very weak to me, but then Hollow is a strong contender. Hollow added with Path of Fire is excellent in all formats of PvE. Has great middle of the road mobility, excellent CC, big damage, lots of fun you can play with it. But I still think it is beaten out as an optimal open world build by the Scrapper. Scrapper gets really nice, rolling, consistent might, quickness, fury, and lots of splash packets of damage that are not on high cooldowns. That means it's right up my alley for running through enemies, no matter what expansion you're in. If you're in Corteria, kind of blowing things up. So I want to show you guys how I run that here. We're going to open the video with a little demonstration of this build in some low pressure areas and how well it can kill chain, and also in some more difficult content too. Actually, getting through these forge irritatingly has been a bit of a problem there, but we will see exactly what the shortcomings of the build are and where it really shines. Let's check out the Scrapper. So as you've probably noticed, this build is utilizing the Flamethrower. So let's demonstrate some mass AoE tagging capabilities of the build on the Fire Island chain, where we can be all fiery themed with things. This is a map with some actually pretty punishing aggressive enemies. The Jade Armors on the other side of the island are actually very dangerous to this build. They have very high weakness uptime, lots of knockback. We have high stability on this build, we'll get to very soon. They can be quite dangerous. Instead of fighting them, I've decided to go for the slightly easier destroyers, but look at how many we have here. So I'm just going to run in and demonstrate what it's like to aggro a huge amount of mobs. And you're going to see that this Scrapper build actually gets through just fine because of one of the fundamentals of Scrapper, which is that as long as you're doing damage, you have lots of health. If you look at my barrier for a second there, it's very high as long as we're continuing to roll the damage. So this is what I really like about this build. It's not always relevant, but it means that you're generally pretty good, and then when you get mass over aggro or things scale up too much, you're going to actually start succeeding very well. So there you go, we just managed to blow up a lot of enemies there at that dynamic event, and really we don't struggle very much. Next, let's have a quick look over at a hero challenge in Heart of Thorns. So most people end up having to go to LFG or looking for groups for this kind of stuff. I maintain that if you have the right build, you'll be okay. I picked this hero challenge because of its break bar. And this build, you'll see I've already broken the mushrooms break bar here. This build actually has lots of break bar damage. What this mushroom will do is every now and then it will charge up a mini break bar that you're supposed to interrupt, and then it will jump at you if you don't interrupt. So on this variant, you can see with my specific utility skills here, I should be able to get through that very comfortably. But the break bar is actually pretty huge, so that side of the demonstration maybe doesn't go too well. But the rest of the build, you can see, we're resustaining super well. I'm missing a lot of these dodges here, right? And I'm getting chunked by stuff that I could easily be avoiding. But even face tanking them, we're doing fine, and we're managing to take this group down event down all on our own and at pretty good speed. I'm actually leaving this in real time. A lot of these other clips and demos of the build I'm speeding up a little bit, but here I'm showing in real time. A lot of you guys might have memories of this particular boss taking ages and ages to burn down, right? Especially when it scales up with lots of allies and the allies aren't on builds that pull their weight. Well, this is what it looks like doing it alone on this build, you know, on a reasonably optimized setup. He's actually not too bad. So there you saw I actually attempted to go for the break bar, but never quite landed. Another thing you can do against this guy is when he does the leap, I think if you just completely avoid it, he like stuns himself almost. The actual most dangerous thing about him is avoiding his little charge, which this build can very comfortably do. You'll notice I've got high super speed here as well as high AoE cleave, and there's a really important trait choice that we'll be running into as the video commences on whether you want lots of might or you actually want to be able to move reasonably, because that's one of the interesting things going on with Scrapper at the moment. So Hollow could definitely do some of this, Core Engineer could definitely do some of this, but you know, because they're kind of more calibrated for single big bosses. But Scrapper can kill individual big bosses too, and has all the usability and quality of life that you'd expect and want from everywhere else while doing story missions and while out in the open world. As ultimately we're looking for an all-rounder build. So there you go, cleaned it out pretty easily. Going back to Corteria, where stuff's pretty squishy. And once again, a fiery area. Just want to show you guys what it's like kill chaining. Just you're running around. Maybe you imagine we're doing a heart right now. And there actually is a heart here, and we just want to kill as much stuff as possible. We want to tag as much stuff as possible. We want to move on. You'll see most of this stuff is dying in just a couple of hits. Our might continues to roll. We have, you know, plenty of opportunity to get out of combat and mount if we want, or just have mobility straight up on us. These are Earth Elementals, which are some of the tankier mobs that you actually find in Corteria. Then as soon as we get over to the Wind Riders, you'll see they absolutely blow up. And we could just run through a whole field of enemies here, just flaming things in the face. You'll notice the way that I'm playing, I'm not always on the Flamethrower. I do dip into Hammer a lot, and that's because Hammer's so strong. But you can play it even more brain dead and campy if you like, and just stick in Flamethrower. That would give you a lot of boons, which I'll show in a second. Last but not least, we have the Flame Gin test. So, there's 4 of them here. Ultra deadly, very dangerous mobs that move a lot, have break bars. So we're going to fight them all. We're going to kill 4 at once here on this build. It's extremely dangerous. This is one of the hardest things you will ever have to deal with in the open world here. This is worse than that mushroom event by far. So I'm using the mortar kit here to aggro my enemies in. And once they're balled up, I'm just trying to pressure. Now, you'll notice my health gets low a lot, and it is pretty volatile. This is a very dangerous scenario. But you have to pay attention to the barrier on top of my health, too. Even though my health orb is flashing and it looks quite dangerous, quite often I do have a bit of a cushion of barrier there that keeps me safe. Here's the lowest that I end up going. But we managed to start scoring our kills. Pay attention to the break bars as well, how they're just constantly draining as soon as I start utilizing a little bit of the battering ram I've got there, as I start utilizing the mortar kit, the mechanics of which we'll look at in a second. And their break bars go down. I actually was very sloppy with that last guy's break bar, but we killed 3 at once, just destroying their break bars, just because of the way Scrapper works and these big hammer thunderclaps and combo fields and so on. Here we can come on, we can just take 2 out in a more confined area. You might think, oh, well, look, open field helps you a lot. Well, here we've got a much more closed place. These guys are quite deadly just because of the terrain in this area. And, well, we can still roast them down. That Flamethrower 3 can help with those break bars too. And, you know, get the drops, move on, keep traveling through path 5. Even got a lodestone there. So there you go. That's a demonstration of the build. Hopefully you like the way it looks. Who doesn't want to be a Flamethrower scrapper, right? Well, for the rest of the video, I'm going to show you how to set this up and play this. So the way that I set up Scrapper is fairly simple according to most traits. They're pretty easy decisions. What is most prominent is the main theme that we're going with, and that is the Flamethrower theme. Going for Flamethrower pretty much dictates an entire specialization line and a lot of your playstyle. One of the main things you'll notice here is that we're on the Flamethrower, which is pretty much a melee kit, and we're on the Hammer, which is pretty much a melee kit. So one of the biggest downsides to this build is its lack of range access. Luckily, we do have an elite skill to kind of help out with that, but it's not the preferred elite skill. Nonetheless, let's talk about it, and let's talk about why we're doing what we are. So the Flamethrower itself is actually not that impressive as a kit. The break bar on it, damage or effector on it, air blast, feels like it could be a little bit better. Maybe a bit more quality of life in terms of range or something like that. The flame wall for napalm really isn't that great. It's okay for blast finishers, definitely, and building your might higher. But this is kind of clunky and annoying to mess with all the time. The skill 5 is very low impact at the moment. I expect a lot of this will actually be bumped up and revamped over the next couple of years. Then also, the tool belt skill really isn't of much value to us because it's a condition damage oriented skill, and we don't really care about condition damage out here in the open world. Obviously it's burning, so burning is, you know, the best condition damage that you could actually go for. It's got the highest baseline potential, and you can just spam this out for free at no cost. It has no cast time or anything. You just kind of press the button and off you go. The animation you saw there was me fat fingering the launch personal battering ram. But in general, what we really care about the Flamethrower for is the newly reworked skill 2, which we can ground target and throw anywhere we like for a blast, and also, you know, big explosive damage in an area. But then also the Flame Jet, the auto attack. So this is kind of nice. This auto attack will chain through lots of targets, 5 of them in a very good cone. It's actually much wider than the animation would suggest here, actually spreading out a lot more shotgun-y than you'd think. The only poor side of the auto attack in Flamethrower, and this is our main damage in some respects, our main baseline attempt to get pressure out. The only downside to it is when you're going up hills. So here you can see if there was an enemy above me and I was shooting, you see how it looks like the animation we're going under the ground? Well, we actually are going under the ground. Even if I targeted someone above, we would be aiming underneath them. I'm not actually sure how action camera affects this, as you can manually aim anywhere you like with action camera. So maybe this is a better build with action camera. And this Z-axis issue is not unique to Flamethrower. It exists in lots of players, lots of areas of Guild Wars 2, and isn't always a big deal. But it kind of depends on the map and the terrain that you're playing on. It can kind of make Flamethrower a little bit more frustrating. But what's really beneficial, even given some of these downsides here to Flamethrower, you know, we could have invested in grenades, for example, for a build. And grenades would give us lots of constant pressure at a ranged, capacity. Then also we can take lots of other fun things like the Shrapnel Sanguinary Array combo. So Shrapnel means that you're going to be getting bleed on most of your grenades, and then Sanguine Array means that you're going to be getting might on whatever bleeds. And so grenades can be might generation. And, you know, they've got some other elements to them that are quite nice. I've soloed dungeons on these. You could go the grenade concept, but the reason I like Flamethrower just that little bit more is because of its synergies with Scrapper, giving you a ton of boons as a bedrock, purely passively, that roll and build even out of combat, and it's all achieved in a very simple way. This will all be apparent in the traits very soon. What else have we got? Well, Hammer. So I've picked Hammer because it has an extremely weighty high cleave skill 2. You basically are going to be holding Hammer most of the time in this build, then you drop out for the skill 2 every now and then, and you go back in, okay? But also, you can drop into Hammer for any of the other cooldowns here. You can drop in for the Rocket Charge, which is a good pressure and combo field, such as Full Leap Finisher as you go to resustain. Or you can use this for Big Barrier and block. Or you could use this for a bit of range and break bar damage, especially, you know, when you land the Thunderclap, it's break bar damage, and then when you use the skill 3 and it's break bar damage. Or you can use some of your tool belt skills and the skill 3 as well. So Hammer is extremely high impact, but it's bursty high impact. So the idea is you linger on Flamethrower as much as possible to keep the boon up time as much as possible. Then you dip into Hammer for brief windows to do your thing, and you get back. So that's the idea of the build. That's the way that I'm running it. And so let's look, first of all, at our utility skills and see why we've chosen them. So you'll notice it's actually, obviously the Flamethrower is taking one of the slots. And beyond that, I'm actually heavy on gyros. In fact, you could very justifiably run all gyros. If you've been watching my other open world build videos, you'll know my opinion about utility skills is that you can kind of swap them as you're going around. And I really do believe you could run this setup here, where you have the Medic Gyro, you have the Shredder Gyro, you have the Blast Gyro, and the Sneak Gyro for open world. And I'm going to justify all of these right now. First of all, the Medic Gyro is the single most potent healing skill in the game for heals over time. It has an extremely strong effect on just casting, considering the water field, which means you can get double leap finishes out of it. But also, you even get the reconstruction field, which is another water field going with us. And you can blast these, right? So I could be on Flamethrower, hit the Q, or my skill 6, and when the water field is up, I have a super fast recharging blast finisher on the skill 2. That's something grenades and other engineer variants don't get so easy. So I can blast in it, and then I've just splashed water and got various other synergies. So this is why the Medic Gyro is so strong, especially on the Flamethrower setup, because you can always be comboing out of it and getting big value as you run around. So that's why I've gone with this one. Obviously, the heal turret is still very nice. I wouldn't, look too illy at that. AED's a bit, even when you trait and stuff for it, the cooldown's a bit long, and the Elixir H just and the medkit don't feel like they're high enough impact for solo gameplay to me, particularly the medkit with that solo comment. As for the other gyros, we've already justified Flamethrower. Well, the Shredder Gyro is really good pressure. One of the things that this build is amazing at, where did all my barrier come from there? Holy crap, I have no idea. Something just bugged there majorly, I'm pretty sure. One of the really amazing things with this build is how many lingering AoEs it can drop. This is a lingering AoE. This is a lingering AoE. An enemy in this is getting pulsed multiple times of damage. You can have the Shredder Gyro on top, so that would be another pulse of damage. You can have the Flame Wall, which is a pulse of not much damage. And then you can be flamethrowing. Everything I just talked about would linger while you're flamethrowing someone in the face. So you're getting tons of mini packets of damage. That's what you was looking at with those destroyers and that footage earlier and some of those other places. If you're against a boss or something and you really bunk down, Shredder Gyro allows you to just have such crazy cleave all around you. It's very fun. It's super good damage, and it's mobile with you too. So I like that. The blast gyro is very easy to justify in how much might stacking you get from it. It's a fire field that blasts itself and passively pulses might. So all on its own is giving us 13, not even holding the flamethrower. On top of our bedrock of 10 that the flamethrower gives us, there you go. You got max might. It's also decent break bar in the big blowout it does, but it's on a long enough delay that this isn't actually that workable with your enemies that are using special animations. So it's the least favored of the gyros to me. The single big packet of damage is nice, but again, in the open world, single big packets aren't the best thing unless you can really renewably get back to them, you know. If I blast gyro to kill, you know, these basilisks here, okay, if we finish them off, what if I run and engage 2 more basilisks right away, which I probably will in the open world. So here, we'll see. This will blow up. We kill one of the basilisks. We don't kill the other one. But now, when I go into more basilisks, I want to use this right away, but I got a big cooldown that I'm waiting on now. So that's one of the downsides, as I expressed in episode 1. It's not something that I have preferential value for. Then also, bypass coating is just a stun break. It does give you a little bit of super speed, and that does have some trait synergies if you take them. We'll have a look in just a second. But overall, I'm not sure I'm really convinced by this one. It is a good gyro, and you can run it. But I think I value other things instead. Then lastly, we have the sneak gyro. And sneak gyro is good. Not necessarily just for combat, but because it's one of the most potent stealth skills in the game. It's incredible stealth duration. Again, the flamethrower offers very rapid blast access that you can combo out of any of these, okay? You can get even more might out of the blast gyro. You can get even more healing out of the medic. Or you can get even more stealth out of sneak. Sneak is good in the open world. It's great to be able to just run past things, to be able to tag hero challenge, mastery points, do whatever you want to unlock a waypoint in a new area and then immediately TP to it over a cliff, trigger a teleport to a friend, open your world map and find a waypoint on the other side of the world safely without getting in combat in the middle. Sneak gyro is amazing for its utility. So I actually by default nearly always have this on my bar, I'm not joking. But if you know you're going to be in a difficult engagement, Mortar is very good. So now let's talk about things away from the gyros. And gyros get an extra synergy when we get to the runes in a second. But let's look at 2 of the other main swaps and what you've actually been seeing. First of all is Mortar. Mortar really rounds you out because look how far away we can hit now. Mortar also provides blind uptime and chill uptime, which degenerates break bars without you having to tech into that from your food or your nourishment or your runes, okay? So this is one of the main things that I've enjoyed about this. This is what you saw was really potent about the Mortar kit with the Flame Djinn. You know, I had to use it to aggro all 4 Flame Djinn, you know, and put myself in that completely ridiculous scenario. But look, like, we're very close to being able to aggro these basilisks here. Look at that, from all this distance away, 1500 range. I'm so far away that I can be on some wonky terrain and they don't even know how to path to me. And I can pressure them high enough that they're not even necessarily out-regenerating my regular damage. Look at that. Especially if I poison them, and then my auto-attacks combo in that same poison field. Their out-of-combat health regeneration is no longer enough, and I can kill things from really far away, you know. Anyway, so Mortar Kit is very, very good. I really like this. I don't really value Elixir X. Supply Crate is good, by the way. This is also extremely good. That would have been good against those destroyers. But my favorite 2 are these 2 on the far right. Then also, if Blast Gyro is the weakest of the gyros, what would you like to swap it out for? Well, you saw me running Launch Personal Battering Ram. Again, the Blast Gyro is great CC, but it's not as on-demand as I'd like. The Battering Ram means that it's on demand now. You get 2 charges of a big-ass launch that you can cast almost back-to-back. The internal cooldown between them is, you know, a little bit, and then you've got 25 seconds for the full count recharge. You've also got Launch Personal Battering Ram, which has massive damage on it. It's a big hit that also applies daze and cripple at range. So this is your aggro mechanic when you run this. If you're not a Mortar Kit, if you're playing with all gyros really and the sneak gyro, suddenly this is really nice for slapping out into something and you know, then closing the gap afterwards, and you can get that pressure. So I really like the launch personal Battering Ram. But there's a lot of justifications for other things. You might like Elixir U to just pulse out extra quickness and things for yourself. I don't really recommend Elixir B to too great of an extent. Rocket Boots allows you to move as well, but we'll get into our traits in a second, and you might not need this. Particularly the Tool Belt skill feels really lame on Rocket Boots to me, and often has done. So there you have it. That's kind of the way I like to set up my utilities, my weapons, and my justification for being a Flamethrower build and what you've seen. So let's have a look now at traits and, you'll see that as soon as we've got all of this stuff in place, most of the traits are very simple. And let's start off with the big synergy. Why a Flamethrower Scrapper? Well, it's actually based largely on some new balance that I want to establish straight away. First of all, if you take Firearms, which is a very aggressive line, largely around Condi, but you can tech for power. If you look at the Grandmaster, we have this Juggernaut. While holding a Flamethrower, we gain might and stability constantly. Also, any might we get is increased duration of 20%. So on a lot of open world builds, you're actually looking at your runes, like you're looking at boon duration on there, like if you're going the fireworks setup or something, or you're looking at strength or whatever to get that might to be a bit more sticky. If you play a Juggernaut Scrapper, then you've always got slightly more sticky might. Also, permanent stability, pretty much. I mean, it can drop when you go to hammer. You'll see it refreshes. So if I go hammer here, use an animation, and then get it back, it doesn't ever drop, okay? We can dip out, cast other things, get the Flamethrower back without a blip, okay? And that's the same with our might generation as well. In reality, in the heat of battle, you're not watching this meticulously. It's not Guild Wars 1. You're going to dip out sometimes, and you'll lose it, okay? So there is kind of a level to it. That you could totally go crazy. That's not really too relevant. The point is, though, you got good stability. And in the open world, yeah, there are CCs. You know, you might fight a Warthog or something. Some of those Jinn, some stuff does CC you. And this just gives you that padding in those scenarios where, you know, there's against one veteran that might CC you. The rest of it's all trash. You kill all the trash. The veteran can't even get through to you because of that little bit of stab. So it is a nice quality of life most players won't really think about. And when it comes to certain personal story boss battles in the contemporary game, it's true as well that one little bit of stability is really nice. Because the ArenaNet often sets stuff up that they have big attacks that swing through at you. And if you miss a dodge, they'll put like a tiny little knockback on it. Now the tiny little knockback doesn't even affect you. I think you can see a reasonable demonstration of this in the mushroom fight that I showed at the start of this video. But it would be good in like Balthazar, I've shown on another video, and so on. So that's the first part. That's why Juggernaut's good. But what about the Scrapper connection? Well, that's the Scrapper Grandmaster Applied Force. So we're looking at the combo of Juggernaut and Applied Force. Here's what Applied Force does with the Elite Specialization. That we gain quickness whenever we gain over 10 might. This gives us 10 might. So this means that we're constantly getting passive quickness. It is not 100% uptime, because Applied Force will only give us 3 seconds of quickness every 10. But if you build boon duration, you can go higher. There's very authentic versions of this that run Diviner's Runes. You are not looking at a Diviner's Runes demonstration right now, but Diviner's Runes is like Zerk plus concentration, and means your quickness duration goes through the roof. And so does your constant stability uptime. Like, you can even have 2 stacks of stability as the previous one lingers when the new one refreshes. And you can even have, you know, lots more might just from running Diviners or putting a little bit more boon duration on your rune sets. It's totally valuable. It's not the one that I'm showing right now, but it might even be the strongest version, okay? But in addition to the quickness, look at this. Quickness is also not just giving us the regular effects of quickness, but now quickness is worth another 200 power. So in this way, a specialization line that people usually associate with being a bit more tanky is now doing a lot of damage, because we're getting this ticking all the time and plus 200 power whenever it comes on, okay? So quickness uptime is now something important to us, and I'm going to show you a way to do that with runes in just a second. So that is the big combo that now you can frame within everything I already said that's decent about this setup, and there you have it. You have the concept of the build. I guess we'll look at the runes first here. All the synergies and gear stuff I've talked about on previous videos is absolutely relevant for Scrapper. I actually really like the fireworks setup just because of the 25% move speed, since we are kind of melee oriented, especially if you're sticking on the sneak gyro instead of mortar. But here's the most special thing that you could choose to run if you're not going a Diviners, like Diviners Marauder or something like that. You can run Chronomancer runes. So Scrapper gyros now are actually technically classified as wells as of a recent update. And being wells means they now synergize with this rune set. Apply 2 seconds of quickness whenever you cast a well. So we get power, we get precision, and we get quickness. So now, as I run around spamming these gyros, which is absolutely what you do, even if I spam the sneak gyro in combat, you can now see that my quickness is lingering just that bit longer. You see this here? And now my Flamethrower auto attacks with all of that quickness are just that much more juicy, and we get into the next one. I actually think Flamethrower might be even nicer if the cooldown between bursts is a little bit short. You see where we turn it off to reload? Basically, they short on the reload time, so that while you have quickness, it's good. I definitely do believe in mixing in some Diviner's gear on this setup, by the way. I definitely do, because you really want to keep that quickness nice and high. It doesn't have to be 100%, you're in a raid or something, but keeping it high for while you're bursting down whatever little pack of mobs you're going for is always good. Generally, gyros are very fast recharging, so they're worth playing into. Alright, so with all of that discussed, and particularly the chrono runes, let's have a look at the traits. So it's all pretty simple here, really. You know, 2 of our lines are fixed. We know we're probably going to go explosives for extra damage. And a lot of the traits, we don't have too much to get into. But there are some nice things in the nitty-gritty. First of all, our crits cause bleed. That isn't too relevant to us. We do tons of packets of damage, though. And as many of them as possible are going to crit, because we're going for a 100% crit chance. So this is actually some damage, all right? Just because we do so many hits of, you know, shredder gyros and spare capacitors and flame jet is 10 opportunities to proc sharpshooter. So sharpshooter is relevant particularly with another trait later, but the bleeds themselves we don't worry about too much. I'll come back to that in a second. Next, we have Hematic Focus. We have increased chance to crit against bleeding people. So we can pretty much be sure bleed's going to be there. So we have less reliance on precision on this build, because we only have to really get to the 90% threshold or the 70% threshold plus Fury. So this is one reason why Diviners can definitely work, all right? And next we have Bleeding lasts longer. Well, that just means that this lasts longer and has higher uptime, and this counts for a bit more. So that's the minors. But where Sharpshooter really becomes interesting is when we go into the selectables, and we'll look at this rung of Adept. So first, you could go high caliber. Super simple. Crit chance is even higher now. 15% chance, as you can see. So now, we only have to build to 75 or 55, and Fury plus our traits will take us the rest of the way, since what we're doing with the hammer and with the flamethrower is all going to be in range of this. Largely is all going to be in range of this, all right? So this is just a really, really good solid choice that you can go for. However, if you want to build your gear a little bit differently, and so if you actually see on this particular demonstration video, I'm at 60 here, which is slightly over. You could instead take Sanguinary Array. Don't worry about chemical rounds. This is just conditioned damage. But you could take Sanguinary Array. Gain might whenever you bleed a foe. So I just pointed out every auto attack has 10 potential chances to trigger Sharpshooter. Sharpshooter is bleed. So this is a big might generator for you. It's not quite as prominent as Grenade's Shrapnel. That combo triggers all the time and can give you tons of might. And the Sanguine Array might does not last very long, okay? So Juggernaut will extend it a bit, but it doesn't last that long. However, this is totally viable. And in fact, if you go back and watch my demonstration footage of this particular variant that I was running where I was on high caliber, you'll actually notice that my might could have been slightly better. And remember, always, the more might you can do solo, the better. So this is actually something you could toggle if you really want to. I'm going to leave it on Sanguine Array for the rest of this video. It's your choice. Next, we've pretty much only got one choice we care about. It's no scope. Down here, pinpoint distribution. It's condition damage for allies. Thermal vision is condition damage and burn-oriented stuff. But this is what we're really looking at. No scope. Critical hits on foes give you Fury. And you really do want sources of Fury on this build. So the Fury is like 50% uptime here, right? As long as you crit, you've got it. But then, as long as we have Fury, our ferocity is also higher. So Fury now is not just crit chance, it's crit damage too. It's a bit like with quickness. It means that we have, because of this trait, we now care a lot about keeping Fury on us, and we now care a lot about keeping quickness on us. I mean, we cared about Fury a ton anyway, but now there's even more reason to keep that going, even more reason to look into, say, Diviners and so on. And then finally, Juggernaut. This is not as good as Juggernaut, and you're not going to maintain a wide condi range for modified ammunition, and this is a condition damage-oriented trait. This, back in the day, used to be good on power builds, but nowadays, there you go, Juggernaut. We already spent a big discussion on Juggernaut. So that's the idea of Firearms. That's what you can run. Let's have a look now at explosives. So our minors are that we drop a bomb whenever we dodge. Isn't really that relevant. That all of our explosions cause vulnerability. This, again, isn't really that relevant because a lot of what we're doing on Flamethrower, on Hammer, and on Gyros are not explosions, but the dodge roll is. And finally, this last one, Shaped Charge, is actually relevant. Deal increased damage to foes with vulnerability of 10%. So this is nice. We seek to get lots of vulnerability on targets anyway. This build has tons of vulnerability, but in very specific places. So the main one we're looking at right now is Hammer, okay? So the Thunderclap is an excellent engine for vulnerability. It rolls vulnerability on your target as they stand in it. Also, the Shock Shield. So this is actually 10 vulnerability if you use the Shock Shield in someone's face. And like I described before, you basically dip into Hammer, and you'll probably use the 2 and then one of these cooldowns, all right? And you keep the vulnerability going. And then we're going to look at a Scrapper trait in a second, which just accelerates your vulnerability like mad. So those are the minors and explosives. The rest, we really just care about damage. So the first one here, I've taken Glass Cannon. This increases our damage well above the threshold of 7%. It's like a Scholar bonus. You could instead take Blasting Zone, which is your power is increased. And whenever we blast finish, we grant might. Blasting Zone is the more rounded out trait that you can play into a bit more. So for example, if I'm in the Flamethrower and I use my Medic Gyro, now when I blast in it for a heal, it's giving me a little bit of might as well. But it's not that much might. And it's not that much power either. And I don't really like having to think about that too much. So Glass Cannon's nice. You might say, well, hold on, you're a Scrapper. You've got low vitality. That's one of the things Scrapper does. We'll look at in a second. Yeah, surely you're going to lose that very quickly. But also, I would argue we're a Scrapper. We go bumming in with a massive amount of barrier, and then that protects our Glass Cannon, because as a Scrapper, we have so much barrier. So I actually like this synergy. Grenadier, we're not using grenades, so we're not locked to it on this build. We can actually try other things. So you know, this is just a bump up for us. Next, we have the aim-assisted rocket. As we attack, a rocket comes out. That rocket is an explosion, so it's a bit of vulnerability. That's not the bit I really care about. The bit I really care about is how much damage this is. This is a very fun trait for open world, because the way that you play is you see a target, you run over like this Drake, you and you're going to use a couple of animations on the Drake to kill him, and you're going to want to kill him as quickly as possible. Right now, my rocket is ready to go. It doesn't have an animation showing that, but I can hit him with anything I like, and out the rocket comes. And that's where that extra chunk of damage comes, and the free vulnerability and stuff straight away. Now, you know, maybe I loot the guy, maybe I speak to an NPC, maybe I'm doing something, but I'm going to go to another Drake in like a pulse. And when I come to the next Drake in this pulse, well, the rocket's going to recharge in the down. There you go. So I get the rocket. It fires out, and out it comes. So that's basically my thinking here with the rocket. It's little regular spikes of damage against low health targets. This guy has actually managed to eat us alive. That's hilarious. He managed to get right between our stability and put a massive stun out on us. Again, like, so if I was Blast Gyro there, I could have hit the tool belt, and we could have kept going with the stun break. So that's why I like this. And the reason I'm saying that is because you've got pure passives in the other slots, okay? Big Boomer. Gain vitality and ferocity based on your power. So extra crit damage and extra health. I got up to 17k here. So Big Boomer looks really nice. Especially in PvE where you've got so many stats, meaning conversion is worth so much. But this passive stuff, it's not as good as the aim-assisted rocket rolling out and getting you that extra stuff. Even at 1500 range, by the way. So you tag someone with a mortar, and the rocket will come out to help you out too. This bottom trait, we really don't have to worry about, because it's mostly to do with bombs. The Fury on it looks really nice, don't get me wrong. That's permanent Fury uptime if you're constantly hitting with explosions. But if we opt for this, we don't get the free aim-assisted rocket, which is an explosion. We'd have to be playing into our dodges and stuff. It's just not worth it. The rocket is free, easy, good damage for this area of the game. Then finally with the Grandmaster, you do kind of have a choice. First is Minesweeper. You do more mines when you dodge, but this feels a bit weird in open worlds. Enemies can be kind of laggy and slow. Like if I aggro a guy and then I dodge backwards to create the mines, well, I've just spent the time dodging and creating a gap when I could have just been hitting him with the Flamethrower. And now I have to hope he actually walks through them to really play into it. And if there's loads of targets, you know, they don't have a great radius or where they blow up. It's just 120, so it's not like it really does that much. So there's a lot more you can get out of your Grandmaster than Minesweeper. Don't be deceived into thinking, oh, this is really good for vulnerability. We can look at Scrapper for that. Shrapnel is not that good because we don't really have that many explosions, so we don't really worry about this. Shrapnel is good on explosion builds because of the breakbar drain as well as the sanguine array stuff. But finally, you just got orbital command. So a bit like with the aim-assisted rocket, we have a free seeker tag that we can call down energy from the sky to blast an area. That's what this giant lightning field is, okay? So look at this, right? I just dropped the flame wall. The flame wall will tag him. Oh, sorry. All right. We get the rocket. But then here, this laser beam, you see that? And it strikes. The laser beam's pretty nice because it's actually a blast, okay? So what's going to happen in your melee playstyle is your gyro, you'll be in someone's face, and then the orbital command will blast whatever you've just done. So you're like getting free blasts, even in addition to the very regular Flamethrower 2 blasts. So it's nice. It's big radius on that, and it's big damage. The unblockable bit doesn't really matter too much. So there you go. Now we have Scrapper, which is largely a tanky-oriented line, but does have some nice stuff. So the two minors, first of all, speed of synergy. Whenever we use a leap, we get super speed, or when we use a blast finisher, we get AoE super speed. 5 seconds. Well, that's pretty good. As you've seen, I've got a lot of blasts. I literally just talked about another synergy, and you're going to be able to get lots of super speed on this build, which is important when we're so melee heavy. Next, a percentage of the strike damage we deal becomes barrier. That's why in the footage at the start of this video, you saw I was just attacking things, and I had like so much more health. I had like all this barrier that was rapidly regenerating as well. Barrier from Impact Savant is not just about having more health. It's about resustain as well, because you just keep hitting. So it's like you're healing. It's like you have epic regeneration on you, right? As long as you're able to keep hitting, and that means you can't get CC'd. And Juggernaut helps us with that, right? So you just keep rolling the damage, all right? Some kind of Grenadier or, I mean, Hollow, you can definitely have good stab up time as well, especially if you're running Elixir U and stuff. But that's like spiky. This is just always there. Keep the stab up. So that's our minors, and this barrier is amazing, guys. It's very strong. The downside is we do lose vitality. So for that reason, on this demonstration, you've actually seen I've been on Marauders. Marauders so that I can tech into Sanguine Array, if I like, because it gives you the crit chance, but also that bit of vitality. You can kind of think of yourself as a Guardian or an Elementalist or a Thief on this one. When you go Scrapper, you're going to have very low health. Next, let's look at our selections. So as far as I care, there are 2 choices on the first. You can go with Mass Momentum, which has an extra synergy with Juggernaut applied for. So remember, Juggernaut gives us 10 might. The 10 might gives us quickness. Juggernaut gives us stability. Gain might while you have stability. Also, our function gyro applies it as well. So if you want a little bit extra, you can press your F5. I don't do this that regularly, but it's an okay thing to put a field down. But so it's actually all 3 of these traits can combo together. That's why my might is actually lingering even further. The thing is, I think this is an in-combat only build. So you might have been looking at all this footage and thinking, WP, you only get 10 might? No. In combat, we can go much higher, much more comfortably, especially on the blast gyro, okay? So that's why this is strong. If you are running a more aggressive might setup, where you're very careful about might generation on your runes, you're very careful about might generation on your sigils, and you're running Sanguine Array for the sharpshooter, if you do all of that, this is actually extremely good as well. Gyroscopic acceleration. And you've seen I did actually demo this in this video. What this means is when our wells end, they grant super speed. That's really the only thing we care about. But what it means is I can aggro this guy, and maybe he cripples me or something, but I can use the super speed to rush look at this speed that we can move through all of them to aggro some more, right? And then we can maybe get our sneak gyro up, and we're banking on it ending. Like, well, I want to get over there quickly. I'm not out of combat, but look at what the super speed is doing, right? Look at this super speed. It's insane. So this is actually a really fun trait. If I was in open in Corteria an awful lot, I'd actually prefer this trait, okay? And you can calibrate the might slightly differently because you kill stuff so rapidly. Even here in Living World Season 3, I'm killing stuff so rapidly. And you just get the occasional blast out, and you're just racing around the world. Ordinarily, I would have been annoyed about that little bit of confusion on me because it's holding me in combat, and thus it would slow me down. But not when I take this trait. So don't overlook this trait. This is so good. If you're actually starting to find harder fights, Mass Momentum is totally the way to go, though, and is the Juggernaut kind of dream. For the next selection, again, you've got a big choice. First, if you're taking out a lot of lower level, weaker things, again, open world, take Object and Motion. So this is just damage modifiers for you. It's 5% if you have Swiftness, which our uptime could be better on, honestly. But stability, we have permanent stability, well, now we have permanent 5% damage, right? So the Juggernaut stability, like Juggernaut will hook into every trait if you go bottom, okay? They're like designed to be together, all right? If you think about Scrapper, the Scrapper gear is like a welding mask, all right? The devs know that the Juggernaut Scrapper is like a combo, okay? And in recent balance, a lot of these traits are new. They've actually really made it a good idea. Then there's the super speed, which you've just seen. If you run like this variant, you've got tons of. So this is just a damage modifier. But do not overlook expert examination. This is weakness spam. Weakness spam is excellent for break bars, but also it's vulnerability spam like mad. So expert examination is if you ever stun or daze someone, you put weakness and vuln out. So this target might die too quickly, okay? But if I thunderclap the lava elemental, he's in the lava, so this could be really dangerous. And then, oh my god, we cancel cast it. Oh my god, wait, and I cancel cast my gyro. Ooh, I think that lava interrupts your actions. That's like special living world lava that they actually went further with to make more dangerous. That's interesting. But here, so check this out. I thunderclap him, and now he's weakened. And look at the vulnerability stack up just because I used the skill 3. He actually managed to get... Well, that's really weird. How did he get away from me there? He's like sliding across the ground. But anyway, our vuln goes super high with this. This is where we start to really get a lot of vulnerability. And I'm actually going to linger on this for the rest of the build video because I actually like this more. 5 vulnerability is 5% damage, all right? Except it's a little bit more for the first one you put on because of shape charge. And if you're not a 25, you may as well just keep on rolling this out, right? So now, while we're on the Flamethrower, if Air Blast is a vulnerability applying skill, right? So it's just more efficient. It's just doing more stuff, okay? I wouldn't really worry about damage dampener in PvE. I don't think it's that relevant. Nothing's that spiky. The devs know that spiky gameplay is kind of frustrating, so they don't worry about it. Last but not least, Applied Force, which we already kind of talked about a lot. And now you can see how it kind of synergizes with everything else. So this is it. This is the way I really like Scrapper. I think it's hotly contested with one other engineer variant that maybe in the future, if you guys are desperate to see, I can show off. But largely, this is a powerhouse of a way to just roll through PvE, roll through the story in exactly the way that I like. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. You got value out of what I have to say here. Some of you will be wondering at this point, well, hold on, what about gear? What do I do? The idea is to get to 100% crit chance. There's a ton of fun things you can play with. I actually have a full presentation on exactly how to do that, which you guys can check out in the playlist. We open the playlist with that. So if you're not unsure on those sides of things, what Diviner is and how it works, please do check that out. Here at the end of the video, I'm editing this section in because I do think I have another interesting thing that the big engineer fans might like to watch. Throughout this video, I've been mentioning a grenade variant several times. Now, the truth is, and the more I look into it, the more I actually really like the grenade variant. Of the two, Flamethrower or grenades, some people's personal preference will put them on the grenade side. I have a lot of really strong justifications for it, but it's very much reliant on messing with your in-game options to be a specific way. And even then, it's a more annoying build to execute in terms of quality of life. You're going to think you get carpal tunnel. So if all you're really playing is engineer, try out the Flamethrower build, enjoy. This is an extremely strong build. But if you're still looking for more, I absolutely want to show you the grenade variant. It doesn't invalidate this Flamethrower one. You're going to get more stability, more on-demand break bar damage, possibly more barrier, definitely more blast finishes. But on nades, you're probably getting more convincing might, vulnerability, fury, and the cherry on top, range. So I'm actually going to do double engineer videos. I'd feel kind of wrong showing Flamethrower without talking about this other, potentially even slightly better variant on the nades. So enjoy this one for now, and I'll have a mini, more concise video on grenades next up in the playlist, since they're based on pretty much the same fundamentals, just some slight swaps. See you guys for that soon, and until next time, take it easy.